Hi, I want to show you 5 beginner blues bending licks for electric guitar. These are all for lead playing. I'll go through them all right now and then break them down in a minute. Here's number 1. Number 2. Very simple. Now we're on to 3-note licks for number 3. Number 4. And number 5. So, breaking those down, we've got 5 different licks. The first 2 are 2-note licks, just 2 notes back and forth, and that's the exercise. And the last 3 are 3-note licks. Maybe not even, I wouldn't even call these licks. They're just little fundamental phrases that you see within larger blues licks all the time. Blues and blues rock and anything influenced by electric blues playing. So if we go back to the first one, everything that we're doing here is in C minor pentatonic, which is 8th fret, the scale. That's 8, 11, 8, 10, 8, 10, 8, 10, 8, 11, 8, 11. So everything we're doing in these 5 licks is on the top 3 strings, the G, B, and E strings. So looking at the first one, we've got 3rd finger on the 10th fret, G string, bend that up a whole step. You're going to bend it up a whole step, which means 2 frets. That's your target note, 2 frets up. When you bend, make sure your thumb is over the top and you use at least 2 fingers on that string. So don't just bend with 1 finger like that. That's kind of weak. You can use both fingers to push the string. So, make sure you bend it up in tune to the note that you're trying to hit. And then the second note in this phrase is B string 8th fret with your 1st finger. It will be useful to spend some extra time just on this one before we go to all the rest, because if you can get this one perfect, the rest are going to come pretty easy. So the way you get this perfect, this is probably the hardest part out of everything you're going to do in this whole lesson. Put the hard part first. That's not very wise of me, but here goes. You want those 2 notes that you're going back and forth, no overlap between them and no space between them. So you don't want this sound where they would be overlapping. That can be cool sometimes, but it's not what we're going for in the kind of playing that these phrases you'll find in. So stuff like that kind of playing, you don't really hear this. It's a different effect. It's useful sometimes, but not what we're talking about right now. So you don't want any overlap between those notes, but you don't want space between them like this either. So you want each note to go all the way up to the exact point that the next one starts. And one more thing you want to avoid, if you haven't noticed yet, I'm not letting that bent note back down. I'm not releasing it. I'm not going up and back down. You don't hear it come down. You make the switch to the other note when the bent note is at its height. So that's another difficulty. What I tend to do, and I didn't do this consciously when I was learning to do these. It just kind of happened in that process of trying to get them to sound the way I want. What I do is, with this 1st finger on that 2nd note, it's touching the G string. It's touching the string that comes down off of that bend. So when I play the 2nd note, this 1st finger mutes out the previous note. And when I'm playing it as slowly as I am now, you can kind of hear a little clunk in between. And it's kind of unavoidable because you're going from a bent note and trying to silence it at the same exact moment as you pick another note, so there will naturally be a little bit of noise in there. You just want to minimize it. And then when you play it fast, you don't really notice the noise once you get up to that speed. So, going on to the second exercise, everything I said about the first one applies here too. So now we're using the top 2 strings, still within the C minor pentatonic. We've got 11th fret, B string, bend that up a whole step. That's your target. And your alternating note is first finger on the high E, 8th fret. Notice I'm not using my pinky here. I'm not sticking with just one finger per fret. One, because you don't have to. Your fingers can stretch that far, especially when you're up past, say, the 5th fret. And two, these 3 fingers, those are your juggernaut fingers, and your pinky is the 98-pound weakling that doesn't really do much when you're trying to do bends like that. I've got pretty light strings on this guitar, but if you have heavy strings, your pinky is pretty much useless if you're trying to do a bend. So, plus if you look at all of the great guitarists who play in this style, Jimi Hendrix, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jimmy Page, Eric Clapton, all those guys, they almost never use their pinky for lead playing. It's mostly the first 3 fingers. So if you look at all of the experts and they're all doing it the same way, might as well start with that way. So 3rd finger on the 11th fret, bending up a whole step, alternate with high E string, 8th fret. Again, no overlap between those notes and no space between them. On to exercise number 3. This is a 3-note exercise now. Back to bending at the G string, 10th fret, up a whole step. Now 8th fret, B string, 8th fret, high E string. Those last 2 notes can overlap. I'm playing them at the same time. So when I play those 2, I just lay my first finger down flat on the top 2 strings. And I don't have to separate those 2 because they sound pretty good together. Picking on this one will be important because we've got a 3-note pattern. We might as well do the same picking each time through. The way I do it is down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up. That sets up your pick always to be going towards the string you're about to play. Down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up. Number 4. Similar principle where you go 11th fret, B string, bend it up whole step, 8th fret, high E, 8th fret, B string, and those are your 3 notes to repeat. Again, no overlap from the bent note to the next note, and then those 2 notes on the 8th fret, on the top 2 strings, those can overlap. So again, my first finger just lays flat on those top 2 strings. And picking on this one, I go down, up, up, down, up, up, down, up, up. Finally, the last one, number 5. We're on the high E string, 11th fret. Technically, bend that one up a whole step again. But with all of these bends in every exercise, you can kind of, in the long run, you can use your taste on how much you want to bend it. You can do, for all of these, you can do a whole step bend or you can do less than a whole step bend. That would be whole step bend. That would be kind of even less than a half step bend. And they sound a little bit different. They have different characters, so you can explore that in the long run. So back to number 5. 11th fret, high E, bend that one up. 8th fret, high E, 8th fret, B. And picking on this, I go down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down. Now as you use these, it'll be important to actually put them into your own playing, especially when you're improvising. Move it around to different keys. You can do them all in G or something if you're playing something in G minor. Just try to string them all together and create your own little licks. And when you learn other people's solos, try to identify these things in their licks too. So, there you have it. Let me know if you have any questions. Have fun.